Masechet Menaḥot Daf Chet Gufa Amar Rabbi Yochanan Shelamim Sheshechatan Ba'echal Kesherin Shene'emar Ushchato Petach Ol Moed Velo Yeh Tafel Hamur Min Ha'ikar. We're going back to a statement that we saw in the previous daf, where Rabbi Yochanan teaches that if you have a korban shelamim, a live animal, and you do shechita instead of in the courtyard outdoors where you usually would do it, instead, one did it in the Hechal, in the Kodesh, that is still valid. How do you know? Because the Pasuk says that one should slaughter the Shelamim at the entrance of Ohel Moed. Now, if you can slaughter it at the entrance of Ohel Moed, then certainly you can also do Shechita in Ohel Moed itself. Notice the language doesn't say in the courtyard. It specifies that it's outside of Ohel Moed. So Ohel Moed is the Ikar. That's the main pointer the landmark that we're using, and petach is tafel, is less stringent than the main part of it is of Ohel Moed itself. And so, if the secondary place, which is in the entrance, is okay, then all the more so the primary place should certainly be okay. That's what Rabbi Yochanan taught. Now we're going to challenge this, because if you do use this logic, lo yeh tafel chamur min ha'ikar, then we would not need the pasuk in the following beraita. Metibe, Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera omer, minaim she'im hikifu goyim et ha'azara, she'akohanim nichnesim la'echal v'ochlin b'kodshei kodashim, u'shyareh menachot. Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera asks, how do you know that, let's say, enemies came and surrounded the courtyard, and they're throwing arrows in, and it's impossible for the Kohanim to be staying there and eating the korbanot in the courtyard. So how do you know that they can go into the hechal indoors, where they will be protected from any projectiles that are being thrown by the enemy, and they can eat kodshei kodashim there? It's quite an amazing scenario. Is this a theoretical scenario? They're trying to figure out, why would it be that the Kohanim can't eat outside? Or is this reflecting the devotion of the Kohanim, that even in such time as a war, when there's this emergency and enemies are surrounding, still they were so devoted, if they had to, they would go inside into the Kodesh, eat Kodesh Kodashim. Anyway, how do you know that this is permitted? Either to eat Kodshei Kodashim or Menaḥot, which both have to be eaten by Kohanim in the courtyard. How do you know that inside the Hechal is also okay? Because Talmud Omar beKodesh HaKodashim Tochelenu. It says you will eat it in the Kodesh Kodashim. So there you go. That's pretty explicit that you can't eat it there. That's the Braita. But now we ask, why do we need a pasuk? Lema b'chasad Ohel Moed yocheluha v'lo yeh tafel chamur min ha'ikar. The pasuk already says that you have to eat it in the courtyard of Ohel Moed. Now, if I know that you can eat kodshei kodashim in the courtyard of Ohel Moed, then the secondary place should not be more stringent than the primary place. So all the more so you can have it in the Kodesh. But the Baraita does not say that. Instead, it brings a pasuk. Why doesn't it use the same logic that Rabbi Yochanan brought? Maybe there's something wrong with that logic. And we have a beautiful answer. Avodah de'adam oved b'mkom rabo, amrinan shelo yeh tafel chamur min ha'ikar. Achila she'en adam mochel b'mkom rabo, tama dekatab kera. Halo katab kera, lo yeh tafel chamur min ha'ikar, lo amrinan. When you're talking about service, that's what we were talking about before. If you did shechita of a korban shelamim, that's avodah. Now, can let's say a human servant do service in front of the master? Yes, that's what the master wants. The master has a servant, and the servant goes and brings things in and out and prepares food, whatever the master wants. That the servant does, and will do it in front of the master. It's actually a sign of respect to do it in front of the master. So there's nothing wrong with that. And therefore, we say also the same thing here. If a Kohen, in service of Hashem as the master, would do shechita, again, in Hashem's service, and do it in the Hechal. Hechal is like God's home. So you do it in God's home in front of Him. That would be respectful in a human context. So that's a respectful thing also to do in the holy context. And so there, we say that it's impossible that the secondary place should be more stringent than the primary place. If you could do it in the secondary place, all the more so you could do it in the primary place. It's a beautiful thing to show that here, we are here serving Hashem and doing shechita. However, eating, a servant would not eat in front of the master. Of course, servants need to eat. They have separate quarters. They eat before, after, and it's in a different room. A servant wouldn't sit down at the dining room table or sit down in front of the master and start eating a sandwich. That would be not respectful. And therefore, it would not be respectful. We would think that it's not respectful for the Kohanim to eat in the Kodesh, in the courtyard. That's okay. They could, just like servants, they could eat outside, they could eat in the basement. But to eat in the king's own palace, in the king's dining room, we would think would not be respectful. A servant wouldn't do that, and therefore we think that we would not do that, be able to do that. That's why I need the pasuk to say, oh, in the Kodesh Kodashim, it's okay. If the master allows it, then it's allowed. And so we do. Over here, we need the pasuk, because if not for the pasuk, we would not say, in this case, that the tafel chavu min ha'ikar. When it comes to a human servant would not eat in the dining room, but would eat in the outer room. That's even though that the dining room is primary, it's not respectful. So that makes sense. Itmar belala chus chomat azara. Rabbi Yochanan amar pesula, Resh Lakish amar keshera. Now we're talking about other things that one does in the wrong place, seemingly in the wrong place. What if someone mixed the oil with the flour outside of the courtyard? So the mixing is done before the kemisah. Kemisah for sure has to be done in the courtyard. Kemisah, and then you bring it to the corner and you burn it. All those things have to be done inside. But how about the mixing of it? Rabbi Yochanan says, pesula, no good. It has to be in the courtyard, also the mixing. Resh Lakish says, it's okay. You can mix it outside the courtyard. Resh Lakish amar keshera dichtib, veyasak aleha shemen, venatan aleha lebona, vehadar, vehebi'a el bnei Aharon, hakohanim, vekamas. So the Resh Lakish has a good source. Look at the order of the Pesukim. In Vayikra chapter 2, it says, first, the Kohen will pour oil on it and the frankincense upon it. So first is the mixing, and then after the next pasuk is, and then he will bring it to Aharon and the Kohanim. So first the person who brings it does the mixing. Doesn't have to be a Kohen. A person who mixes it, who donates it, mixes it, and then it's brought to the Kohen and to do the kemisah. So the kemisah is done afterwards by the Kohanim. What do we learn from here? Only from the kemisah on, that's when a Kohen has to do it. Before that, the mixing, anybody could do it. Limed al yisika belila shekesherin bezad. We learn from here that anything before kemitza, which would be the pouring and the mixing, the pouring of the oil and the mixing it together with the flour, that even a non-Kohen can do it. And since you don't need a Kohen, then that means also that you don't need it to be in the courtyard. Those two halachot go hand in hand. If it had to be with the Kohen, then it would have to be in the courtyard. So Resh Lakish proves from the fact that it doesn't have to be by a Kohen, because it says first that the owner brings it and mixes it, and then it says the Kohanim, he gives it to the Kohanim, and the Kohanim does do kemitza. That's a good source for Resh Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan amar pesula, kevan dasiyata bichlihu, nehita kiuna la ba'ya, penim mihat ba'ya. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, it's no good, because it has to be done in a sacred vessel. You have to mix it in a sacred vessel. So it's true that you don't need a Kohen to do it. Okay, that's okay. That Kohen does not do it, but you still have to do it inside, because what, you're going to take the sacred vessel outside? That doesn't make sense. So you have to do it inside. A non-Kohen can do things. They can do shechita, for example, and that would have to be done in the courtyard, and yet a non-Kohen could do it. So here also, the non-Kohen will come into the courtyard. He can come in if there's something that he needs to do there to perform a certain service. And so therefore, it must be that it is in the courtyard, because it's true, a Kohen, you don't need a Kohen to do it, but you need a temple vessel, and therefore that's in the courtyard. Tanya kevated Rabbi Yochanan, belala zad keshera chus chomat azara pesula. We have a b'raita that supports Rabbi Yochanan, because it says that if a non-Kohen mixes it, that's okay. But if you do it outside of the temple courtyard, then it's not good. That's exactly what Rabbi Yochanan said. Itmar, mincha shechasra kodem kemisa. Rabbi Yochanan amar yavi mitoch beto v'yimale'ena. Resh Lakish amar lo yavi mitoch beto v'yimale'ena. Another machloket between Rabbi Yochanan and Resh Lakish. If the flour of the mincha offering was lacking, it went missing, some of it. Now you need the minimum amount of asiri ta'efa. If there's less than that, then that's a general rule that it's invalid. Now, in this case, it went missing before the Kohen did Kemitzah. So, does that make it permanently bad? Let's see. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, it's still okay, but the owner should go get some more flour. It's missing a little bit. Go get some more flour, fill it up, then you have a Nasiri Taifa, and then you can do Kemitzah, and everything is totally valid. The Shakish, however, says, no, you already put it into the service vessel, the original flour you put into the service vessel, and then it went missing. That makes it invalid, and it becomes permanently invalid. You can't fill it up again. You have to get rid of that flour and bring all new flour. Let's see the reasoning. Rabbi Yochanan amar maybe bitoch beto v'yimale'ena kemesa kab'aleh. Rabbi Yochanan says you can still fill it up because it's not the putting it into the initial bowl that establishes it as a korban, as a mincha offering. Okay, you brought some flour, you put it into the main bowl. Some of it spilled out. Now you don't have, but it wasn't established yet, so it doesn't become invalid just because it went missing. So you could bring some more and refill it, and then you'll be fine. Resh Lakish amar lo yavi mitoch beto v'yimale'ena kedushat keli kab'aleh. Resh Lakish, however, says no, you can't bring more from your house and fill it up because putting it into that first service vessel already establishes as a korban mincha. So you brought the full amount and you put it into the service vessel. Good. Now that's it. It's a mincha. If after that some goes missing, even before the kemitzah, it's already established. It went missing. Now it's invalid. All of that flour is completely invalid, and you can't go ahead and add some more. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan challenges Resh Lakish from a similar law regarding oil. Hasad halog im ad shelo yasak imaleenu tiyubtam, regarding a mesorah who has to bring a log of oil. And what he's supposed to do is one kohen pours it into the palm of another kohen, and then he will go and apply it to the thumb and the ear and the toe of the mesorah. Now, if it went missing, he brought the full amount, but some spilled or was gone. If it's before the kohen poured some into his palm, then it's still okay. You can go back home and get some more. So you see, this supports Rabbi Yochanan. Just like if you haven't done the main service yet, you can still, it's not established yet, and you can refill it. So regarding oil, so too regarding the flour. So this supports Rabbi Yochanan. It's a challenge against Resh Lakish to Yubta. We leave this as a challenge. Itmar. Now we have another machloket between Rabbi Yochanan and Resh Lakish. Shiraim shechasru ben kemisa lehaktara. This time, the meal offering, some of it went missing, got lost, after the kemitzah, but before the kometz was burnt. So you took the kometz, but then some of the remainder went missing, and now you don't have the proper measurement. Rabbi Yochanan amar maktir komes aleha. Resh Lakish amar en maktir komes aleha. Rabbi Yochanan says it's okay. You can still burn the kometz even though there's missing a part of the remainder. But Resh Lakish says no, that's it. You cannot continue to burn the kometz anymore. Alibad Rabbi Eliezer kula amala pelige ki pelige alibad Rabbi Yoshua. We're about to quote machloket Tanaim that's similar to this issue, and we're going to say that according to the Rabbi Eliezer, there is no disagreement, meaning they're not disagreeing within the Rabbi Eliezer, but their disagreement is within the opinion of Rabbi Yoshua. Well, let's see what they say. Titnan. They learn in Mishnah, in this Masechet, Nitmeu shiareha, nisrefu shiareha, avdu shiareha, kimidat Rabbi Eliezer keshera, kimidat Rabbi Yoshua pesula. If some of the remainder of a meal offering after you did the kometz became tameh, or if it got burnt, or if it got lost, So all of it, we're talking about all of the remainder, got lost. So this is a little different from above, because above the Resh Lakish and Yochanan were saying if some of it went missing. Here, if all of it got missing, according to the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, it's okay. What do you mean, kimidat, the principle? Well, actually, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua argue about something similar when it comes to animal sacrifices, that if you have an animal sacrifice and, let's say, the meat should exist while you're doing the blood sprinkling. Well, what if it's not? If there's no more meat left, the meat that would be normally be eaten, supposed to be eaten, and it's all gone, can you still sprinkle the blood? Rabbi Eliezer says yes, you can still sprinkle the blood, and therefore, in the parallel case of the komets, even if all of the remainder of the meal offering that is also supposed to be eaten by the Kohanim, even if it's gone, you can still burn the komets. So it's an equivalent opinion. And Rabbi Yoshua also, according to his principle, he says regarding an animal sacrifice that if there's no more of the edible meat, that you're supposed to be eaten is gone, is all lost, then you cannot sprinkle the blood. So too, if the meal offering remainder is all lost, or all tameh, or all burnt, then you cannot burn the komets. Okay, so that's the Machloket Tanaim, which is about a case where it's entirely burnt. Man de pasal ke Rabbi Yehoshua. Now the one who says it's no good, that would be Resh Lakish. Resh Lakish would follow Rabbi Yehoshua, who says also, when it's all gone, you can't burn it. And so too, when some of it's gone, also you cannot burn it. So those two fit together. What we said above, that according to Rabbi Eliezer, there's no machloket, because Rabbi Eliezer said that even if it's all gone, it's okay to burn the komets. Even if there's zero, nothing of the remainder left, you can still burn the komets. So for sure, Rabbi Eliezer would say that if it's just some missing and some is still there, for sure you can burn it. So therefore, you see that the opinion says okay to burn. That's Rabbi Yochanan would easily fit into Rabbi Eliezer. But there's no way that Resh Lakish could fit in to Rabbi Eliezer, because Rabbi Resh Lakish says even if some of it is not burnt, then certainly if all of it is not burnt, you cannot. So man de pasal, that's what we start with. Rabbi Yehoshua, the one who says that it's no good when some of it is missing, that's the Shakish, would have to follow Rabbi Yehoshua and cannot follow Rabbi Eliezer. So that's what we said above, that there is no argument according to Rabbi Eliezer. However, within Rabbi Yehoshua, we still can say that there's machloket within Rabbi Yehoshua. The one who pasal, Resh Lakish, says, yeah, I agree with Rabbi Yehoshua, not only when it's all gone, but also when some of it's gone. Rabbi Yehoshua hatam ela de la ishtayar aval hechad ishtayar afil Rabbi Yehoshua modele. And the one who says it's okay, that's Rabbi Yochanan, when some of it is missing, it's still okay to burn the komets. So he would say, I could agree with Rabbi Yehoshua. Rabbi Yehoshua would agree with me. When did Rabbi Yehoshua says you can't burn it? Only if there's zero left of the remainder. But if there's some left of the remainder, then Rabbi Yehoshua would agree that it's okay. And so they're both disagreeing within Rabbi Yehoshua. When Rabbi Yehoshua says that all of it's gone, then you cannot burn it any longer. So Resh Lakish says, you know what, I think that's true also. If some of it exists, but some of it is missing, also you cannot burn it. That easily goes together. But now we want to say that even according to Rabbi Yochanan, although Rabbi Yehoshua is stringent and says you can't burn it when it's all gone, but if some of it's there and some of it's gone, then you can burn the komets. And in fact, we have a braita that supports Rabbi Yochanan. The Tanya, Rabbi Yehoshua supports that, not only does it support Rabbi Yochanan, supports that Rabbi Yehoshua would agree with Rabbi Yochanan, because it quotes him. Rabbi Yehoshua Omer, Kol hazevachim shebatorah sheter mehem kezait basar o kezait cheleb, sorek adam, kezait zahab, kechasi zait basar, kechasi zait cheleb, eno zorek et adam. Regarding all korbanot, not all, we're going to see all as an exception, but all other korbanot in the Torah, if there is still left over from the meat, a kezait, or is left over from the cheleb. So either that which a person would consume, let's say it's a korban shelamim or chatat, right, that some of it is eaten by people. The basar is eaten by people, and some of it is eaten by cheleb. As long as there's a whole kezait of one or the other, you can still sprinkle the blood, even if the rest of the meat went missing. And however, if there's only a half a zait of basar and half a zait of cheleb, he cannot sprinkle the blood if that's all that's left, because these two things do not combine. The half zayit of basar is going to be eaten by people. The half zayit of cheleb is going to be consumed by the mizbeach. So they do not combine together. You need at least a kezayit of something that the same thing will happen to it in order to say, oh look, see, the korban exists, such that you can sprinkle the blood. ובעולה, אפילו כחצי זית בשר וחצי זית חלב, זורק הדם מפני שבעולה כולה כליל. Ola, in this case, is actually more lenient, that even if there's only half a zait of edible meat, that's not edible, half a zait of regular meat, and ola, everything is burnt, and half a kezait of chaleb, then you can still sprinkle the blood of that korban ola. Why? Because in a korban olah, everything gets burnt, both the basar and the cheleb. And so therefore, you still have a kezait altogether of the remainder of the sacrifice, where that is all in one category, because in olah, everything is burnt. And then the Baraita ends with a weird sentence, Ubemincha, afa pishe kola kayemet lo yizrok. Regarding a korban mincha, even if it's all there, you cannot sprinkle the blood. Well, what do you mean blood? There is no blood for a korban mincha. So we ask, Mincha, Maya b'dita, what is Mincha doing here? Amar Papa, Minchat Nesachim. Oh, we're talking about a Korban Mincha that accompanies an animal offering. And it's saying that even if the Korban Mincha is all there, but none of the meat of the Korban is, I'll say, Shelamim. You bring Korban Mincha together with it. None of the meat of the Shelamim is, all the meat of the Shelamim is gone, all the Chelev of the Shelamim is gone, but the whole Mincha is still there. Still, you cannot sprinkle this blood. Now, why would you think you could? I would have thought that since this korban mincha is coming with the animal, so that it's part of the animal sacrifice. Maybe it's like the body of the animal. The point is that when you're sprinkling the blood, there should be something that remains of the sacrifice. And since the korban mincha comes along with the meat, so maybe I would consider it as part of it. And therefore, this line of the Baita teaches us not so. You need a kezait of the cheleb or the basar, but the mincha offering that accompanies it is still only accompanying it, and is not sufficient to permit one to sprinkle the blood. Okay, so all that is a very good proof for Rabbi Yochanan, because here Rabbi Yeshua clearly says that there's a difference between a kezait being left over. If you have a kezait, then that's okay, you can still sprinkle the blood. So therefore it makes sense that Rabbi Yeshua would also say regarding korban mincha, that as long as there's some of the remainder of flour that's in existence, you can still burn the komets. If there's none, that's in the case when there's no blood, when there's no meat, then you can't sprinkle the blood. And so too, when there's no flour remainder, then you cannot burn the komets. So this is a very good proof for the interpretation of Rabbi Yochanan. Now we ask, what about Resh Lakish, who said that you don't burn, even if some is missing, you don't burn anything at all? Uman de pasal, how is it going to explain this? He certainly, that's Resh Lakish, certainly cannot go with like Rabbi Eliezer, because Eliezer was way too lenient. So he has to be like Rabbi Yeshua, but how can he explain this baraita? Shane hachad amar kera, ve'rima kohen min ha-mincha et azkarata v'ktira mizbecha, ha-mincha adi'ita lekula mincha lo yaktir. And so Resh Lakish will say that the case of the animal sacrifice and blood is different from a korban mincha. It's not the same. It's true for an animal. You see if there's a kezait or not, and even if it's a lot is missing, but kezait is left, you can still sprinkle the blood. But korban mincha is different because the pasuk says that the kohen will remove the meal offering, its memorial part, and shall make it smoke upon the altar. It says min ha-mincha. Ha-mincha means the entire mincha. The Hayediyah tells you that means the whole thing has to be there. And if it's missing some part of it, even a small part of it, then you cannot burn the komets. So that's how Resh Lakish will interpret that. Ve'idach, and that'd be Yochanan. What will he say to this hamincha? And he will say, mina mincha sheta keva shelema b'shat kemisa yaktir afagav dehashta ena shelema. It says from the mincha that had been complete. During the time of Kemitza, yes, it has to be complete. We learned that in the sugya above. So you have to have all the flour there of a full measurement during the time of Kemitza. That's when it was the mincha. But now, even if something goes missing after the Kemitza, you still can and have to burn the komets, even though now it's not shelema, it means it was shelema. So he agrees, mincha means it was full, but it just means it was in the past it was full. It doesn't have to be full right now. איתי רבי יוחנן לריש לקיש, עד שלא פרקה נפרס הלחם פסול ואין מקטיר עליו את הבזיחין. ואם מי שפרקה נפרס לחמה הלחם פסול ומקטיר עליו את הבזיחין. Rabbi Yochanan now challenges Rish Lakish from my baraita that we learned previously on a previous daf that the Kohanim, every Shabbat, they come, 4 of them, and they remove the showbread and the bowls of frankincense from the previous week. The problem is, what if the bread, one of the loaves should break and fall off, and that part goes missing? Okay, if nifras halechem, the bread falls off and goes missing before it's removed from the table, then it's no good, because the removing of the frankincense from the table is equivalent to kemitza. So then you're doing kemitza at a time when the flour is missing the measurement. So that's for sure no good. And therefore you cannot burn the frankincense. However, if it falls off after the bread was removed and the frankincense was removed, so that means you did kemitza already. And therefore, if it goes missing after that, now while the bread is invalid, can't eat the bread, but you can still burn the bazichin, which would be equivalent to a case of a regular mincha offering, where if it goes missing before the kemitza, you can't do the kemitza like that. But if it goes missing after the kemitza, then you can still burn the kemitza. So if some of the remainder of the flour goes missing after the kemitza, you can still burn the kemitza. This is a support for the Rabbi Yochanan challenge against Resh Lakish. We're going to quote the rest of the Braita, even though this part is not relevant for us now. He says not only it doesn't, according to Rabbi Elazar, it doesn't matter if he actually took it off the table, as long as the time came around noon when you can and would take it off the table. Then even if you don't take it off the table, that's as if you already did, and so you can still burn the komets. But the point is that the question is from here, you still burn the bazichin, so too you should still be able to burn the komets. Amale Hamani Rabbi Eliezer he. Resh Lakish answers, this baraita is the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, not to be confused with Rabbi Elazar. Different sage, different Tana. So he's saying the whole beginning over here, the Tana Kama, is the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, who we saw in the Mishnah above, says that even if it's all gone, if the remainder is all gone, you can still burn the komets. And so this baraita is following that lenient opinion. Amar le, ana amina lach mishnah shelema, v'amat li at Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Yochanan says, what kind of answer is that? I told you a full baraita, full halacha. It doesn't say this is only opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. It says stam. And you tell me, no, that's only Rabbi Eliezer. That's a weak answer. And furthermore, Rabbi Eliezer, my iriya nifras, afilu saruf avud nameh machshir, ishtik. And it says, if it is Rabbi Eliezer, then why would this baraita say a case where, if the bread got a piece fell off, then you cannot or can, depending on if it was before or after you took it off the table. Why does it say only if a piece fell off? Even if the entire bread, all of the bread, was burnt or lost, if it was after the picking up off the table, equivalent to after the kemitza, then Rabbi Eliezer would still say you can burn either the frankincense in the case of the showbread or the kemisah in the case of a regular mincha offering. So why would it say only part of it got lost? Even if all of it got lost, if it was Rabbi Eliezer, they could have said the whole thing, a bigger chidush. Ishti Resh Lakish had no answer. Ve'amai shatak. Now the Gemara tries to defend Resh Lakish in absentia and say, Lemale, how come Resh Lakish did not answer Rabbi Yochanan in a better way and say, Sibur shaneho il v'ishtere tum'ah legabayu ishtere name haserot. He could have said that a korban sibur of a mincha is different. That baraita that we're talking about lechem apanim is a korban sibur, and therefore that baraita that said that it's permissible to burn the komets as long as that was taken off the table, so that's more lenient. Actually, that could be a special leniency that applies only to a korban sibur. Now we know that a korban sibur is generally more lenient than a private korban because it's permitted in the case of tum'ah. For example, when the kohen or all the kohanim are all timeim, can you do a korban sibur? Can you do the korban tamid? The answer is yes, because the korban tamid b'mo'ado has to be done. Even if the kohanim are timeim, they still do it. So we give special permission to cases of a public korban. And so, therefore, we might say that in the case of a korban mincha, that's lacking, like the lechem apanim, where a piece fell off, and it's lacking, and normally it would not be good. So we can actually follow Rabbi Yoshua, who says that, who is stringent, and says if it's missing, it's not good, but who's only talking about a private korban. If it's missing, it's no good. But if it's a public korban, and it goes missing, then it's okay. So you cannot ask me a question from the case of lechem apanim, which is a public korban. I was giving my halacha for Resh Lakish that says that you can't burn it when it's missing. I was talking about a private korban. אמר רבא דבר רבא, זאת אומרת החיסרון כבעמום דמה ואין בעמום בסיבור. Rava Rava says this means, from the fact that Resh Lakish did not give this answer, it must be that something missing, if some of the flour is missing, it's the same as an animal that would have a blemish. When it comes to an animal that has a blemish, there's no difference between a private and a public. Even a public korban that's blemished is no good. It's not like tumah, where we can make an exception for a public korban. So a blemish you cannot, and therefore must be that a chisaron, there's no difference between public and private, and that's why Resh Lakish didn't give that answer. Yativ Rav Papa v'kamar leha shema'ata. Rav Papa was repeating the discussion that we had above. Amar le Rav Yosef bar Shemayad Rav Papa, mi lo askinan de Rabbi Yochanan Resh Lakish b'minchata omer de siburhi upelige. So a similar answer that we said over here, that Rav Yosef bar Shemaya told Rav Papa as he was repeating the above discussion and noting that Resh Lakish did not give an answer. He said that didn't Rabbi Yochanan and Resh Lakish, weren't they talking about Minchat HaOmer, which is a Korban Sibur? And yet they have a disagreement. And Resh Lakish is stringent and says that you cannot burn the Kometz even regarding a public Korban. And that's why there's no way that Resh Lakish could have made a distinction and said, oh, I was only talking about a private Korban, but a public Korban is more lenient, and that Baraita was talking about a public Korban. No, in fact, Resh Lakish thinks that even in a public korban, there's no room for leniency. Amar Rav Malkiyu. Rav Malkiyu is going to quote two baraitot, and both of them are going to be challenges against Rabbi Yochanan, different statements of Rabbi Yochanan that we saw above today. Tana chada, misota shim hasra kol shehu pesula, mishamna shim hasra kol shehu pasul. It's quoting from Vayikra 2:2, which is talking about the procedure of Korban Mincha, and it says Ve'ebi'ah. So nefesh, if someone wants to bring Korban Mincha, so the person who makes the offering will bring it to Bnei Aaron Kohen, and they will do, the Kohen will do Kamas Misham Velokum So, Misota Umishamna, from its flour and from its oil. Al Kol Levanata, and then he will burn that part of it on the Mizbeach. That's Pasuk 2, so Pasuk 2 is the bringing and the komets, and the burning. And then it says, the remainder goes to Haron, and they can eat it. It's Kodesh Kodeshim, so it means they have to eat it in the courtyard and so on. So you see this pasuk is talking about the kometz, and this pasuk is talking about the eating. That's going to be relevant right now. So we have one baraita that says when it says misota, of the flour, that means it has to be complete. And if anything is missing, then it's invalid. And mishamna, from oil, meaning from all of the oil, from its oil, from the proper measurement of oil. That means if it's missing, then the whole thing is disqualified. That's one baraita. There's another baraita that learns something similar, but from the next pasuk. בתניא אידך הנוטלת מן המנחה פירת למנחה שחסרה היא ושחסר קומסה ושלא הקטיר לבונתה כלום. When it says you have to, the leftover of the mincha, that comes to exclude a mincha that went missing, because then it's not all of the remainder, it's only some of the remainder. Or if some of the kometz went missing, or if they did not burn any of the levona. So in all these cases, also the korban will be disqualified. So Rav Malkiu asks, why do we need two different pesukim, pasuk bet and pasuk gimel, to teach us similar laws? Isn't one of them, the first one, talking about a korban mincha where the measurement became lacking before kemitzah, and that shows that it's no good. And this is number one challenge to Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said earlier that if it goes missing before kemitzah, it's okay. You could go home and bring some more and fill it in. But according to this, it becomes pasul. That pasul means permanently pasul, and you can't fix it anymore. So that pasuk, which is talking about the procedure of kemitzah, so it must be that's talking about before kemitzah, it goes missing, no good. And the second one, which is talking about eating, so that means after you did kemitzah, and then between kemitzah and the burning of it, it goes missing, then you cannot burn it, and that will go against the second statement of Rabbi Yochanan. And so now we have two challenges. To Rabbi Yochanan betar vayhu, we challenged both of Rabbi Yochanan's opinions, and we answer both of these. La had lemincha shechasra kodem kimisa di mebi mibeto b'maleh na'in v'ila la. No, the first one, the Braita, is in fact talking about, yes, when it went missing before the kemitzah. And what it's teaching is not teaching us permanently invalid, but rather that if you bring some more flour from home and fill it in, that's okay. And if you don't, that's when it's pasul. It wasn't saying it's permanently pasul, just it has to be full at the time of the kometz, but you can fill it in. וחד לשיריים שחסרו בין כמיסה להקטרה. דף אגב דמקטיר קומץ עליהן, אותן שיריים אסורים לאכילה. And the other, second baraita is talking about the leftover that went missing, some of the remainder went missing after the kemitzah, but before the haktara. That even though, yes, you are allowed to burn the kometz, but the shirayim are prohibited to eat. That's when it says, this is pasul. It's not referring to the kometz. Kometz you can still burn. But the leftover you cannot eat, because the leftover, some of it went missing after the kemitzah. Now the kohanim cannot eat it, and so both of these baraitot can be explained perfectly fine according to Rabbi Yochanan. And now we say, in fact, this interpretation has support. The fact that even though you can burn the kemitzah, you still can't eat it. We know that this is true from another discussion. The sages who were asked, according to that opinion that says that when the remainder went missing after the kemitzah but before the haktara, you still burn it. Who says that? That's Rabbi Yochanan. The question is, that leftover, can you eat it? Maybe just because you burnt the kometz, does that mean necessarily that the leftover is permitted to eat? Ziri says, no, you cannot, because the pasuk says the leftover, meaning all of the leftover, they can eat. But you can't eat it if it's just a leftover of a leftover, just a small part of the remainder remains, then that's not good. Or another way of learning the same law, Rabbi Yanai says that's from the meal offering. That means if it was full, it had to have been full and complete at the time of burning, and then they can eat it. But if it was not complete at the time of burning, then the Kohanim cannot eat any of it. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'amen.